doomed, 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 doomed. Oh, that's what it says. Right there. The doom of our time approaches. Really? Happy New Year, and welcome to Diarden, where we talk about RPGs and D&D. And thanks to all of you who wished us well while my family was sick with COVID the last week and a half. And thanks for being patient that I didn't have any videos come out last week. And thanks for 2023. This channel was new, started in March of 2023, and it's grown so much faster than I expected. We're almost up to 4,000 followers. It's been great. And thanks for all of you who make this channel happen by watching, liking, and subscribing. Thanks, and welcome to the new year. So what did I mean when I said the doom of our time approaches? Well, that's a quote from Ben Riggs, who wrote an essay recently about how the tabletop RPG's golden age is over. The best part of tabletop role-playing games, the era, has ended. That's his point in his essay. It was published on Facebook and it's picked up by ENWORLD. I think he tweeted out chunks of it on X, I guess is what it's called now. I don't know. But anyway, so Riggs is a historian. He wrote this book. It's a good book. I highly recommend it. To be honest, I haven't read it from cover to cover because that's not how my brain works when it comes to nonfiction books. I usually read it like chapters at a time here and there, not necessarily in order. I don't know. I'm weird. So let me be clear. I'm not criticizing Ben Riggs as a person. I'm just criticizing his essay because I don't agree with most of what he says. And this video would probably just have simply been called What to Expect in 2024. But instead, we get the doom and gloom of this essay to kind of bounce off of and come up with what is more likely to happen and why it is likely to happen in 2024. Now, if you're not interested in Ben Riggs and his doom and gloom and you just want to get to my predictions for the future, go to that timestamp right there, just fast forward, and I'll meet you there. So let me take you back to 2001, the new millennium. You walk into a game store and there's just rows and rows of RPG books as far as the eye can see, almost, it seems. Well, that might be a little bit extreme, but there were a lot. There were a lot of RPG books that came out in the early 2000s. All based on the D20 system. There was a huge expansion and a number of publishers got into the game, both literally and figuratively, publishing D20-based RPGs. And that was a great time for the industry, and it started about a 20-year stretch of amazing development in the RPG space. And I agree with Riggs when he said that that was the beginning of a golden age of RPGs, that the original OGL ushered in this 2-decade-long golden age. However, I don't agree that that golden age is coming to an end. Now, he says it's coming to an end because of the OGL debacle that happened in January of 2023. So he's saying that that golden age is now going to end because the very document that started it was threatened by Wizards of the Coast, and therefore the community is turning its back on Dungeons and Dragons and Dungeons and Dragons related games. That's largely his point. You can read the article for yourself. I linked it below. He goes on to say that because of Wizards of the Coast and the recent issues that happened last year, you can see where I talk about that in a previous video. All of those things have contributed to the end of this golden age, as he calls it. And I don't think that's true. I don't think Wizards of the Coast is going to go bankrupt. I think a lot of things people are saying about how terrible it's all going to be, I think that's a lot of conjecture that we really don't have any evidence to support. A large chunk of his reasoning is based on the premise that a lot of these developers and YouTube personalities who were very supportive, and he even refers to Matt Colville as evangelical for Dungeons & Dragons, which I get that metaphor. Makes sense? But because those people are no longer advocating and supporting and writing products for Dungeons and Dragons, that's going to tear the hobby apart. And that is going to lead to the end of this golden era, because all of these developers and publishers and personalities are taking their games and going about their own business, some cases literally their own business, making their own game, and that's going to divide the hobby so dramatically that it'll cause an end to this golden age. That's his point. So his first prediction is that the new version of D&D coming out this year, which he refers to as 6th edition, which is not accurate. It's really just an improved version of 5th edition. And I think the name that's probably going to stick is just D&D 2024, which I know is a mouthful. And I've said this before, it's not a great name. But he predicts that the new edition of D&D is going to be a failure. And I think failure is too strong of a word there, but I also think it's just inevitable that whenever the most popular thing makes a new version, it's not going to be as successful as that most popular version of the game. It's just not. That's kind of how systems work. Something comes out and explodes, lightning in a bottle, Stranger Things, Critical Role, all of these random factors that were largely beyond, way beyond, Wizards of the Coast control. Oh, a global pandemic, worldwide, trapped in your house for better part of a year with nothing else to do but play games. So many things that made 5th edition so popular were not because of Wizards of the Coast. They were just, like I said, lightning in a bottle. So of course, the new edition of D&D is not going to recapture that. And I agree with Ben Riggs when he says that the new edition of D&D is not going to sell as well as 5th edition. I think that's true, but that does not equal failure. I used to work in healthcare, and at one point I worked at a military hospital where we collected data to show efficacy of certain types of treatments. And even though we created large chunks of data and that data was consistent with other sources that collected large chunks of data across the nation, we could not say definitively that this treatment was proven to be successful. All we could say is that it was evidence-based practice. And we couldn't say definitively which parts of the treatment were the most effective. We just knew that as a whole, it got better results than other types of treatments. So that's the thing about cause and effect. It's very hard to prove. It's very hard to know exactly why things work the way they work when you're dealing with such a large system. So we have no real way to know exactly why 5th edition was as popular as it was. And likewise, we'll have no real measurement for the success or failure of the new edition. All we'll be able to say is it didn't sell as well as 5th edition. Everything else is just speculation. And that's what Riggs is doing here. He's speculating. But at the end of the day, the new edition of D&D is still going to be popular. How do I know that? Because D&D has always been popular. And it has always been one of, if not the most popular role-playing game. And it will continue to be because that's the ecosystem that we live in. And I don't see, even as dramatic as last year was, I don't see that being enough of a significant change to the ecosystem to knock D&D off of its pedestal. It's still going to be popular. It's still going to be the most popular role-playing game. It's going to sell better than the old 4th edition did. It's going to sell better than Pathfinder 2 and all these other games. I don't think any of these other games, the MCDM game, the Critical Role game, I don't think any of those games are going to outsell the new edition of D&D. A lot of people are going to buy those new D&D alternatives, and they're going to read them, and they're going to take the ideas from those games, and they're going to incorporate them into their version of D&D. They're going to take ideas from these new games, these new competitors to D&D. They're going to take those concepts and work them into the homebrew version that they play at their table. That's what we're going to do, because historically, that's what we've done for the last 50 years of this hobby. But let's keep going. One of his other points is that the splintering of the 5e community, the fact that there are going to be all these different games out there, is going to make it harder for new designers to break into the industry. That just doesn't make sense. If you have multiple companies out there making multiple different games, how is that going to create fewer jobs? It just doesn't make sense. So I think his point is that the original golden age, as he's called it, started with the D20 system and the OGL. The fact that all of these games were kind of centrally designed around the D&D system because of the open game license. And I guess his point is that therefore, since we don't have that central design goal, that's going to make it harder to make new games. I don't get that. I don't understand that at all. It just doesn't make sense to me. It sure seems like the more options you have available, the more games you're going to get. So let's just run through the rest of these predictions rapid fire. He also predicts that MCDM, Matt Colville's company, will never do better than its initial crowdfunding game, the one that just made over $4 million. And that's a pretty safe prediction because usually people spend more money on the core books than they do on supplements. For example, the Player's Handbook is always the best-selling book of D&D. Not everybody buys every one of the adventures, so all the supplements don't sell as well as the core rules. So this is likely true, but it's not a sign of the end of a golden age at all. He also predicts that if D&D is terrible, then maybe MCDM or Cobalt Press will become the new Pathfinder, but we know the new version of D&D is not going to be terrible. It's not even a new edition. It's just an updated and better version of 5th edition. So it's not going to be terrible. He then says the frequency of $1 million Kickstarters is going to decrease. The Kickstarters for new games in 2023, like Shadowdark, Tales of the Valiant, MCDM, those are doing just as well as the 5th edition supplements and campaign settings were back in 2020, 2021, 2022. Just because these Kickstarters are about new games, they're clearly not less successful than the former 5th edition OGL related Kickstarters. I don't see his point on that one. Next, he says major gaming conventions will plateau. That doesn't make any sense because we've seen the dramatic increase in convention attendance since COVID ended. In fact, I'm pretty sure Gen Con sold out, so I don't know where he's getting that idea from. Okay, so that's enough of Ben Riggs and his doom and gloom. Let's go ahead and make some more realistic predictions about D&D and its future, specifically the future for 2024. I'm going to divide my predictions into 5 categories: the obvious predictions, the not a reach, like not a stretch, the non-D&D prediction, a specific detailed prediction, and a bold, let's swing for the fences kind of prediction. So we got 5 different categories of predictions. So let's start with the obvious prediction, and the first one is that D&D 2024 and the new VTT are going to be fine. They're going to be good. They're not going to be mind-blowing or earth-shattering or amazing, but they're going to be good and they're going to sell and it's going to be popular. The other obvious prediction I have, Wizards of the Coast is going to screw up again. Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro are going to make more dumb mistakes and do more things to tick off the fans, and we're going to have plenty more to complain about in the future. I think that's another easy and obvious prediction. My next prediction is the not a reach prediction. This is not a stretch of the imagination at all. I think Dungeons & Dragons is going to announce a partnership with a new game company. It's too early to expect an announcement about Baldur's Gate 4, and I'm not talking about just another Neverwinter's Nights game. I'm talking about something new, something different, and a partnership with a new game company, a big budget, hoping to recreate the success of Baldur's Gate 3. I think that's a no-brainer. They made a ton of money off of Baldur's Gate 3, and I'm hoping for their financial sake that they have already started working on another partnership in another AAA game. That just makes sense. My next prediction is the non-D&D category, and that's the Stormlight RPG Kickstarter is going to explode. It's going to be huge. It's going to make a ton of money. It's going to outdo MCDM. It's going to blow people's minds. If you haven't heard of Stormlight, it's based on Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight archive novels. He's just hugely popular. His last Kickstarter for his fiction books did over $40 million. So I expect his tabletop RPG to be huge. It's not going to be as big as his books, his fiction novels. It's not going to be the $40 million range, but I do expect it to be bigger than anything we've seen in the TTRPG Kickstarter realm. Now on to my very specific prediction. This is something I'm going to go out on a limb on. I'm going to call a very specific shot. and that's the D&D Forgotten Realms campaign setting. I believe we're going to get a full-fledged Forgotten Realms campaign setting from Wizards of the Coast. It's going to be like the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, but good. That's my prediction. We're going to get a good Forgotten Realms campaign setting that's more than just the Sword Coast. It's going to cover other regions of the setting, and they're going to do it right this time around with the new edition. So my bold prediction is Wizards of the Coast is going to split from Hasbro. We know that 2 years ago, Altifox did a presentation to Hasbro investors recommending this. They wanted to make this happen back in 2022. They wanted to divide the company, so Dungeons & Dragons and Magic the Gathering, split them off from the rest of Hasbro. And I think that was a good idea at the time, and they probably should have done it then. And they probably would have avoided a lot of the problems that they had in 2023 had they done that. So that's my bold prediction. I don't know if that's really going to happen. Maybe that's just my wishful thinking. So what do you think? Those are my predictions for the future of D&D as we move into 2024. Let me know in the comments. Do you agree with Ben Riggs? If some of the things he says make sense to you, because they didn't make sense to me, but maybe you have better insight. Let me know what you think about my predictions, and thanks again for watching. This channel would not be as successful as it has been without you guys and the liking and the sharing and the commenting. You guys have been great. This year has been amazing. I never thought the channel was going to grow this fast. I'm really excited to see what all Dire Den is going to do in 2024 with your help. Thanks again, and see you next time in the Dire Den.